you'll actually visualize falling to your death?
Well, I mean, I have thought about it for sure. I was climbing by myself without a rope, a style of climbing known as free soloing. Like every movement of my hands has been choreographed, basically. I'm like executing a routine. Like I could actually talk you through all the moves on that particular section of wall.
You
like
remember
right now.
everything.
Yeah. Once I found sequences that felt secure and repeatable, I had to memorize them. I had to make sure that they were so deeply ingrained within me that there was no possibility of error. Yeah.
Like almost like a race car driver, and they know
Yeah,
the
exactly.
track.
Memorizing the turns, for sure. Visualization was about feeling the texture of each hold in my hand and imagining the sensation of my leg reaching out and placing my foot just so. I'd imagine it all like a choreographed dance thousands of feet up. If the idea of falling to my death is like insurmountable, like if I can't get past that fear, then like I probably shouldn't be up there.
Alex Honnold, the professional rock climber and free soloer, has visualized himself brutally falling to his death multiple times, seeing himself dying. For the line of work that he's in, for the things he wants to pursue, he has to be completely okay with seeing that scene happen. If he was scared of making a jump, scared or had any fear of what might happen, he might make the wrong decision. He might freeze up. And visualizing this terrible scenario actually gives him freedom. It inoculizes him or nulls him to that fear overall. This is a very specific use case of visualization, not one that probably anyone else really does. But I think it shows the importance and the value of having visualization for very specific use cases that come up over the course of your life. It could be related to your specific sport. It could be recovering from injury. It could be dealing with pressure. There are specific ways that we can use visualization to really improve our mindset, improve our outcomes in these scenarios that come and face us. In episode 3 of my Visualization for Elite Athletes series, we're going to talk about some of those special scenarios. I would argue that almost every athlete faces one of these at some point in time. We're going to talk about using visualization to manage pressure, particularly in championship moments. We're going to talk about injury recovery and the visualization protocols around that. It can help you get back to play quicker and also not lose a step when coming back to play. We're also going to talk about performance slumps and breaking through those, and yip recovery. To me, that's a really interesting one as well. Finally, we'll talk about strength enhancement through mental imagery that I alluded to in the first episode. If you're really liking this, I highly recommend checking out my newsletter. If you sign up for the newsletter, you get the first 6 chapters on my book, the Visualization Handbook for Elite Athletes. That has all of this information and more, and it's in a different format. So maybe you really learn well from these podcast series, or maybe you want a more structured format of a book. That is something that I will absolutely offer to you. If you want to get the whole book, there's a lot more exercises, a lot more practical tips, and some additional specific use cases that you can dive into. I personally think that's an incredible resource, but I also wanted to make sure there was a free resource with the core of the material that was out there, especially for this audience. Let's dive into that first use case, which is related to pressure management, particularly in these championship moments. So something that is important to do, particularly if you're struggling under pressure, is to visualize yourself in these pressure moments. So it's hard to, in practice, simulate what it's like to play under pressure, under a crowd, with a shot at the buzzer. But if we're visualizing, we can recreate that scenario. If we're really good at visualizing, we can create that scenario with immense detail, feel all of the emotions, the sounds, we can actually feel the pressure ourselves, and we can inoculate ourselves to that. And inoculate effectively means that we can become accustomed to it. It becomes normal for us. Very similar to how Alex Honnold was doing that with visualizing his death and his comfortability with falling. We are doing that, or we can do that in any of these pressure situations. So some ways that we do that is we can get familiar with the venue that we're going to be doing it in. So maybe that's in the pregame, walking around the court, getting familiar with the fan noise, even watching a video of the place where the game is played, particularly if you're like a college basketball player, getting familiar with the chants that the other team says or what people might be saying to you and being able to be familiar with that. And so it's not as jarring when it happens. You also want to schedule the rehearsal of the event itself. So Michael Phelps would have this very strict routine and he would go through it. You can even visualize going through your routine in your head, making it as real as possible. And also making the sequencing consistent with what's going on. So just like that, visualizing yourself, the pressure you feel at the beginning of the game, the pressure you feel in transition, the pressure you feel perhaps if the game is really close, really getting comfortable and seeing those scenarios in your head is really powerful. You see this so much in golf where every kid is on the green hitting the 3-foot putt to win the Masters. That's a real thing. It does work. And there's been a lot of visualization research, particularly in golf and in putting. There's also something really powerful about identifying these critical moments and rehearsing them. So that's either going back in the past and remembering those critical moments that you were in and rehearsing them. Even in the past, if you didn't execute the way that you wanted in that pressure situation, with visualization, you have the power to go back, be completely in that moment, and create a different outcome in your mind. That is something that can improve your confidence. That is something that also can improve your ability and your sequencing when that happens again. You can visualize, rather than this negative pattern of remembering when you miss the shot, you can continually rewrite that memory, visualizing yourself making the shot over and over and over again. There's also a progression that we can take with this training. So we can start with ourselves just practicing shooting free throws, right? And then we can visualize adding in crowd noise. We can visualize adding in players. We can visualize adding in the score. We can visualize even the worst case scenario where if you don't make the shot, you lose the game, something along those lines. We can continue to increase the pressure in our visualization, and we can make our visualization, in theory, even more intense than what you might feel in a game. That is a really powerful skill to have, is if we continually amp up and make our visualization or even our practice more intense than what we see in the game. So this is something, for example, Michael Phelps did and his coach did, is Michael would visualize all the things that could go wrong. His goggles filling with water, something with the wake or anything, or if he didn't have his swim cap, how he would perform in those scenarios, what he would do, how he would problem solve. But this also made him used to these scenarios and able to act very effectively when things didn't go his way. His coach, Bob Bowman, would also make his practices very rigorous, a lot harder than the actual competitions. And that's something that we can do. The combination of really challenging practice scenarios and also the visualization side is a very, very effective thing. This is something that many athletes deal with, and it is something that can really set you apart at the higher levels. If you just perform to your baseline when you're competing under pressure, that's generally better than almost everyone else. There's some people that perform even better, particularly Michael Phelps and Leon Marchand, when the pressure is the highest. And my expectation is this is at least in part because of their visualization practice and their preparation around being numb to the pressure, or having experienced it so much that it is normal for them. Now let's take a look at the next specific area, which is injury recovery, the visualization protocols around that. So there have been multiple studies for anything from knee injuries to shoulder injuries to even headaches around how visualization and guided imagery can help you recover and come back to sport quicker from that. And there's generally 3 phases to this injury visualization. So the first is around healing focused visualization. So visualizing your, let's say it's a knee injury. I've had a couple of those. Visualizing your leg mending itself, visualizing yourself performing at full speed, and the tissues coming together. So through visualization like that, there has been research and results around reduced pain perception through that visualization practice. And you can create effective healing visualization. It's a little woo-woo, but some people say you feel this glowing light around your knee, or you feel the muscles come together, or you see or you feel or have the sensation of the tendons strengthening and reconnecting. I think that's viable. That's probably more around the state you're in around healing. So if you're under a ton of stress, if you feel like your rehab is not going well, your results are probably not going to be as good as someone who is really seeing and feeling the progress and visualizing the progress. It could just be from the placebo effect, but the placebo effect, as we've learned in many of these episodes, is very, very powerful. The next area of visualization around recovery is skill maintenance during physical limitations. So even though you can't practice and move, it doesn't mean you can't practice the neural pathways for the movements. So visualization allows you, while you can't run, to still exercise those neural pathways and to potentially even make them more efficient. So we talked about in the first episode the benefit of strength improvement through recruiting more motor neurons in a movement pattern. And that's something that we can do even while we're injured. So you can think of visualization while you're injured as still being able to practice at some level, still being able to work on and preserve the skills that you have. So if you're a runner, you can still visualize yourself on the starting blocks. You can still visualize your first steps. And by doing that, you lose less of a step when you come back. And then the last part of visualization for injury recovery is return to play confidence building. So the first were about the more cognitive visualization of movement patterns and recruiting the right motor neurons for running. The last part is more focused on the motivational visualization or guided imagery around confidence building. So visualizing yourself planting at full strength on your knee and it holding up. That's something that you can repeatedly do. Visualizing yourself, if you're like a kicker in football, kicking with that injured knee, and also visualizing yourself confronting the fear around that and getting past it is a very powerful way to get back to from this injury. I don't know if Lindsey Vonn explicitly used this during her knee recovery, but she is one of the first athletes more recently who is competing in skiing or in any sport with a knee replacement. To me, that's incredible. I would imagine, because of how much she talks about visualization herself with her skiing, she's integrated this into her return to play practice, and she's having really good results, especially at the stage of career she's in and with her past injury history. There's really good science around this. Again, in the book, I go a lot deeper into that. But if you are facing an injury, this to me is one of the best things that you can do. As I mentioned before, practicing is always, or in almost every circumstance that I've seen, going to be more effective than just visualizing. But when you can't practice in the way you could before, visualization is an incredible tool to keep your level of skill at a very high level. Wanted to take a quick second to talk about creatine. So creatine is one of the safest and best research supplements out there. It is shown to significantly improve muscle strength, endurance, as well as muscle mass. And pretty much every elite athlete that I know that does not have a sensitivity to it is taking it. I personally take creatine gummies. I purchased this with my own money. They're delicious. They're easy to take every day. And to me, they're a far superior alternative to choking down the grainy and chalky creatine powder. In the description and in the show notes, there's a link to my affiliate code, which gets you 20% off. I do get a small kickback from that, but I'm only promoting this because I truly believe in the product and I think it is very good and effective. If you're interested in that, the code is AthleteX and you can get your 20% off there. I wanted to take a quick second to talk about sleep quality and its importance for athletes. So if you listen to this podcast, you know that a good night's sleep is very important for your athletic performance. And recently, there's been a lot of good research around the correlation between air quality and good sleep quality. I purchased this Jasper air purifier with my own money about a month ago, and I've seen really good data feedback on my sleep quality and my time asleep going up. I believe the only variable associated with that is this Jasper air purifier. So much of what we talk about related to sleep and related to performance is behavioral, but there's also things that you can literally buy to improve the quality of your sleep or the quality of your performance. I highly recommend this air purifier. I have a code AthleteX that gets you 20% off of it, which is quite a lot of money. If you're interested in that, I have a link in the description and in the show notes. Again, this is something that has really helped my overall ability to produce. And I'm pretty excited about that. Happy to share. Now back to the episode. The next specific case study I want to touch on is performance slumps and breaking through those. A lot of the times we get in performance slumps because we have bad results and they continue to compound and we lose confidence. Confidence and performance slumps are directly related. Sometimes there's something physical coming off of an injury or something feels different, but a lot of the time our body gets back to normal and it's our psychology that is still lagging behind. So something that we can do, the first thing that is generally recommended is to break these negative visualization cycles. So when you're having a conversation with yourself where you're not believing in yourself or you're doubting your abilities or any of these types of things, you can use essentially this stop sign pattern to get out of that thought process. So some people will just be like, stop, while they're having that thought, which is kind of crazy. It's a pattern interrupt, but you can also visualize a stop sign, visualize something else that breaks that pattern. And you can replace that negative imagery, that negative pattern with a positive performance trigger. So let's say you keep visualizing yourself striking out. You can go back, and this takes a lot of practice, but you can have that same at bat and visualize yourself getting a hit and just repeatedly see that over and over again. Again, at the most basic level, your brain cannot really interpret the difference between you doing it in real life and your visualization. And you can rewrite as many good reps as you want through visualization. This is an incredible process for improving your confidence. Another way to work on this is to really focus on identity and belief reconnection. So the first part is rewriting the negative events. The second part is identifying who you are at the most core level. So looking at your values and why you do something and attaching your visualization to that is really important. So if we're sticking with the baseball example, maybe you're in a huge hitting slump and you're thinking so much about your performance, but visualizing why you're doing it. Maybe you're playing baseball because it's something you loved doing with your dad and you love the fact that he gets to watch you, or you're doing it because you want to inspire kids to chase their dreams, or you just want to be really great at something. And connecting the visualization to those outcomes can help you to reprogram why you're doing it. The person who is inspiring all those kids probably isn't going to be beating themselves up around striking out twice in a row. And really focusing on who you are, the emotions you feel in that vision of the future helps you to bring that version of yourself to who you are today. You can also use future and past imagery to really help yourself through perspective and guidance. So visualizing yourself 10 years from now, looking back on this slump, a lot of us will probably laugh at it. For example, if I visualize myself in the stage of podcast I am right now where, hey, maybe an episode didn't go as well as I wanted. If I visualize who I am 10 years from now, looking back on that moment, it's probably a chuckle and it's probably something that I really learned from. So that time travel visualization or that perspective taking visualization can do a lot to put what is happening in the current moment in perspective. A good example of this was from my interview with Jim Furyk. So he was talking to me about what happens when he hits a bad shot. And so after he hits a bad shot, he takes a swing again and he specifically corrects the error that he made. So before he goes and moves on, he visualizes what the best case scenario would be and he feels that in his body. Obviously, that is not a slump. That's like a very mini slump, but the idea can extend beyond just that one moment. If you have a bad round of golf, you can go through and visualize the shots that didn't go your way and correct them in your visualization practice. To me, that is a really, really powerful activity. Related to performance slumps, something that we see in sports, and it's almost a bad word, is the yips. There's multiple approaches for managing the yips. By no means is visualization guided imagery the only option that you have, but it is a tool that can absolutely help you improve your performance and get through having the yips. The yips is a largely psychological and neurological challenge. Essentially, you're interrupting the something that you've practiced a ton by usually injecting thoughts into that process, having this chatter, internal chatter that isn't positive. From the research I saw, negative visualization was directly correlated with yips. So people who visualized a lot of negative things were more prone to having the yips. And negative visualization is something that we can work on. So we can focus on exclusively successful yip-free execution. So ignoring the negatives, almost completely ignoring any reference to the problem. So only visualizing the positive things. This is one approach. There's also another approach where you're interrupting the patterns like before. So visualizing the yips happening and then rewriting that motor movement. So first, another option is we rehearse the pattern, the visualization in the lowest pressure mental environment you can. Maybe you have some putting yips and you're just visualizing yourself stroking the putt smoothly. And even if you have a mental, like a mental yip during that process, you stop and then you go back in. You stop and then you go back in until you can visualize that process consistently. Then you amp up the pressure and you amp up the pressure and you keep that consistency as you go. These interrupts, I believe, are very, very important. You can integrate some of those micro movements. So if you're visualizing your putt, you can see it with your hands and you're integrating your body and really visualizing that movement going perfectly fluidly, interrupting or rewriting when it doesn't go according to plan. A big part of the yips is also confidence. So any of the things related to confidence building that we talked about before in the performance slump are relevant to that as well. And the last specific case that I wanted to touch on was strength enhancement through mental imagery. So as I talked about in part 1, your muscles are not going to get stronger by visualizing. I haven't seen anything that suggests that the minor activation of the muscles through visualization truly strengthens them, but it does strengthen how the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments all work together, as well as the motor pathways. So by visualizing particularly complex movements, you are making your body more efficient at producing those movements. And so visualization can truly be a good tool for increasing strength, just not necessarily increasing muscle mass or density. So some of the things that you can do when visualizing, even strength training, if you're doing a bench or a squat, you can visualize the muscles contracting. You can visualize the intensity at which that is happening. You can visualize the process of what's happening, the order of movements of the muscles. You can also visualize from an internal or an external perspective. So an internal, you're probably going to be doing better recruitment or more effective recruitment of the neurons along that path. But from an external perspective, you can also visualize performing the movement pattern more technically correct. And that can also increase your strength. So if you have really good mechanics when you throw a baseball, you're probably going to get more speed than if you're throwing with poor mechanics. So strength and output is sometimes just a function of technique, which can also be improved with visualization. Using visualization, particularly right after or before you do a movement pattern, is also very effective for improving the efficiency of those movements. We've seen this in Olympic weightlifters, not just in that finger strength study. This has been shown across multiple peer-reviewed studies. Those are all the specific case studies that I have to touch on right now. If there are more specific ones that you have, and you think that I could provide insight or a protocol around that, please reach out to me. I'm available on X, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, in the YouTube comments. Obviously, I'm pretty obsessed with this enough to write a book and create all this content around it. So it's really a joy for me to talk about and to expand on more. Again, I also highly recommend signing up for the newsletter. If you're interested, I would obviously love you to purchase the book as well. I go way more in depth into this specific topic. There's a lot more exercises. And I think by reading that and practicing the exercises, you'll be ahead of legitimately 99% of other people on their visualization journey. Visualization is not a be-all end-all tool, but it is something, a tool in your toolkit that you could have, that you could exercise, that a lot of people are effectively not using to its full potential. In part 1, we talked about why visualization is important, the different types of visualization that we have, as well as some of the athlete case studies of them using it very effectively. In part 2, we went into the frameworks and the nuts and bolts of how to visualize. There are 3 really good frameworks: PETTLEP, the action, observation, motor imagery, as well as the functional imagery training. And then in this part, we really focused on those specific case studies to help you with any of the challenges that are facing you. I really enjoyed putting this together. I hope this created a ton of value for you. And again, please share if this is useful, reach out if this is useful. And I look forward to seeing you in the next series, which is on Tom Brady. Until next time, let's continue pursuing greatness together.